Hello, this is Malorian, and this is the Orc Tactical Team. Rabbit's here because it's Easter. And what we want to talk about today is just Boar Boyz. So I did a video a little while back about just Squigs, and I got a request to talk about just Boar Boyz. So I've touched on this in different ways with some other videos, so hopefully with this I can kind of pull those together and bring up some fresh things at the same time. So when we're looking at these Boar Boyz, you know, there's really only the two types. We've got our regular Boar Boyz and Savages. And the biggest problem right away is we're talking about cavalry and an 8th. Cavalry is pretty weak. You know, you always have to deal with steadfast. Fast is great, but even though speed is good, I mean, a lot of other units are faster too, so your speed advantage doesn't mean as much. And now with war machines being more accurate and with being more shooting in general, these guys just don't survive as well and just kind of really give up their points very easily. So when you want to put them in your army, it's usually going to be for two main reasons. One, because you're just trying to make it fun, having as many different elements as you can. You know, if you're going to have one of every unit, you got to throw in some Boar Boyz there. But the more tactical reason is going to be something more where you're going to be really needing its speed. So, because even though the speed isn't that much better than a lot of things, it still obviously does have a speed advantage. So, first of all, let's really talk about the difference, because when you have your two choices, a lot of times it comes up, well, what should I take? Should I take the regular Boar Boyz or should I be taking the Savages? And when you're looking at them, the Savages are 2 more points based to begin with. The differences between the two is that the regular Boar Boyz have light armor, whereas the other guys have, the Savages have Frenzy, and then they have a 6+ ward save. So between those, you kind of have one that's going to have a bigger punch, and then the other one, you're going to have one that's going to be a little bit more defensive. And for my part, if you're going to be doing this, you probably want them to be defensive, because if you're just going to be charging in and easily losing all these points, you might as well be taking advantage of the fact that they have a better armor save, so they'll be able to survive. I mean, the last thing you want to do is take, say, a whole bunch of these Savage Orc big guns with 2 choppas. They're going to do so much damage, and you rush in and you kill, you know, a few guys, or maybe not even. Maybe the guys have better initiative than you, and then from their attacks back, boom, you're decimated. You know, maybe you killed 75 points, but they just wiped out 100 and whatever of yours. So it's just not worth it. So you're going to make sure that you're going to be getting a good return. The only way that I'd really be looking at Savages is if really you're going to be attacking something that's going to be weak, slower than you, or even if they are faster than you, so weak that they aren't going to be much of a threat, and that you need to be killing them really fast. And so something that could be as part of this is, let's say, if you want to really just blast through support units as fast as you can, right? Like maybe they just have little tiny units for Empire, they might have little blocks of 10 free company just to get in your way, and really what you want to do is just hit it, destroy it, and get away before they can counter you. Or maybe you want to zip up the side and you want to make sure you kill those war machines so you can, well, keep on going killing other war machines, and also make sure they don't counter you. And seeing as how you can only have limited number of models fighting them anyway, you want to make sure they're as killy as possible. So in those regards, Savages might have their place. Another way that they might work their way in is if you're doing a Savage Orc Boar Boy Death Star or Horde Star. And the idea there would be that this is just going to be massive points denial. You're going to take a large unit of these Savage Orc Boar Boyz or even Biggins, and it's just going to be as big as you can take it, and it's just going to hit as fast as you can. And the main idea is that you should be killing lots of stuff, and it's going to be hard to destroy this unit. Of course, you'll have the shrunken head in there, so you have a 5+ ward, which kind of deals with a little bit of lack of armor. But in terms of, you know, point denial Death Stars, this is probably more of an interesting idea than overall, you know, your best tactical choice. You're better off going with, you know, a big huge unit for the same points of Black Orcs. There's a massive Black Orcs, which is going to have a lot more wounds to it, and even hit harder with that Strength 7. And yeah, you're probably best off with that. But alright, it still has some potential there. For the Boar Boyz, you might want to look at them. Again, you have a little bit better of an armor save, but the thing is, they don't even have it come with the shield yet. So for me, if you're going to be taking regular Boar Boyz, I would give them a shield. That's 2 points. All of a sudden it makes them completely even with the Savage Orcs. And so then, for the same points, the Boar Boyz have a 3+ save, whereas the regular or the Savage Orc Boar Boys are going to have a 5+ armor from the boar, and then a 6+ tattoo. So with that, at least, you know, if you're facing a lot of regular archers, I mean, you're not going to be facing down a lot of organ guns very well, but if you're just getting a lot of archer fire coming in, or if you're trying to take on some strength 3 units, you can last fairly well in there. And unless you get pretty bad rolling, and probably the best way to know that is if you're a Space Marine player, and know if you keep on failing your power armor saves, you know, then you're going to be doing fairly well and at least holding on. And then some of the benefits here is that even though the Savage Orcs have more attacks, remember that a big part of your Boar Boys, of the attack, is coming from the boar itself. It's going to have that 1 strength 5 attack. So if we have equal points, so it's going to be that one Boar Boy with a shield versus the Savage Orc Boar Boy with nothing. One's going to have a strength 4 attack due to Choppa, and with the strength 5 attack with the boar, and the other one's going to have 2 strength 4 attacks and 1 strength 5 because of the boar. So it's going to have 1 extra weak attack, but the main thing is going to be that strength 5 anyway, for the most part. So, you know, really the potential between them isn't all that great. I mean, the way that this really starts to really explode is when you give it, you know, the extra choppa, or you give them a spear, and then, you know, you make them biggins, so they're all strength 5 attacks. You know, that's, or strength 6 with the spear. That's where it really can come in, where these guys really give a bigger punch. But really, when you're on the cheaper end of things, I'd almost really want to stick with the Boar Boys. When we were talking about before, you could be taking on these support units. Just know that you aren't going to be as killy as the Savages. So if you face that unit of the, you know, just the small units of 15 or something, it could be that you don't kill enough to take away Steadfast, and could be facing a counter charge. Same thing when you go and fight the War Machines. You're a little bit weaker, but, you know, in strength and attacking ability, so you're not going to be killing them as fast. The counter to this is, at least when you're coming in, you're not going to be losing as many. And really, when it gets back there, it might even be better off that you would go in there, spend 1 turn in combat, you're locked, then you destroy them in their turn of combat and charge again on yours. And this is a big thing that usually comes from 40k, which is the idea that you want to be tied in combat in your opponent's phase, because then they can't shoot at you. I mean, if you just came in, destroyed a war machine with your Savages, combat reform to face the next one, and then that organ gun just blasts them and kill them all, well, what's the use? You might as well be a little bit less offensive, kill a few, kill the rest in the following turn, and then on your turn you can charge. So, little things there. Really, for the most part, though, with all this, it's all going to be about point effectiveness. It might be great to make them all biggins, to give them spears, to give them whatever upgrade you can, but in the end, you want to make sure that they're just good enough to get their points back, or a bit more, and then probably reserve their own points. I hear a lot of stuff for Savages. There's a thing on Wars here right now, but what would you take? If you had 2 points, would you take the spear, or would you take the extra choppa? And, well, first of all, to weigh myself in, the amount that you actually kill between the two is very minimal. The big things, if you go with the 2 choppas, then you're failing your trip test on a 1 or a 2. So right now, absolutely, I would go just with the spear rather than the 2 choppas. But really, that's not even a question to me, because if I was to take them, I wouldn't give them any upgrades at all. They just be as cheap as possible. And like I've kind of said before, I almost see them in a lot of ways as being a upgrade to your fast cav. I mean, usually before you'd have your units of wolves or your spiders that rush up and try and get war machines and stuff. And really, if you look at it that way, if you pay a few more points, instead of having a goblin on a weak little mount, now you have an orc on a stronger mount. So look at it that way. And if you were to get all the upgrades, then all of a sudden you're paying a lot more points. So I'd rather keep those points down so I'm getting the best effectiveness I can. Because a lot of times, I'm sure us orc players all know that you rush up there with your wolf riders or something into a war machine, and all of a sudden the war machine crew beat you, and it's pretty embarrassing. And that can actually happen a lot, especially with something like the dwarf war machine crew, which are tougher. So at least, you know, if you go with Boar Boys, that should pretty much never be happening unless you get really unlucky. The other thing that I've kind of talked about before too is that you can run these things as buses. You know, then you just be taking them as cheap as possible, which would be a plain Boar Boy with no upgrades whatsoever, and then just take a bunch of them so you can just put some characters in there and run up and smash. And really, those Boar Boys are just for ranks. But really, if you're going to be doing that, you might as well take the cheaper wolves and get more of them, right? So you have more ranks, easier to take away steadfast. You might lose more of them to shooting, but you had more of them to begin with. So I know visually it looks bad to have orc characters and a wolf unit, but deal with it because it's tactically better. So if you care about that, you probably aren't caring very much about trying to get the best tactical use out of a unit anyway. So there you have it. 2 types of units. If you really came down to it, I think for the same points, I'd rather have a Boar Boy with a shield rather than a Savage Orc Boar Boy. Really make sure that you look at effectiveness whenever you're dealing with these things. Kind of look at them as an upgrade to your fast cav, and then all of a sudden it's a lot easier to justify taking them into your army. And in the end, it's probably going to be best just to have fun with it. This is one of the crazy units in Orcs. You got an orc riding a pig, for God's sake, right? So have some fun with it. All right, thanks for watching. Bye.